Hello and welcome to TV360 News Now. I am Deji Badimasi. Now, many people are feared dead as gunmen suspected to be members of the Islamist sect Boko Haram attacked Damboa village in Borno State in the early hours of Friday. Following the spate of attacks in that part of the state, soldiers have reportedly deserted the area. Officials say it took the few vigilante operatives in the area to protect the people. Even though the casualty figure is yet unknown, reports say it could be high as the insurgents raced down so many houses in the course of the attack. Now, the federal government has been justifying its decision to ask the National Assembly to approve a $1 billion loan to fight the Boko Haram insurgency. President Jonathan has sent a letter to both the Senate and House of Representatives seeking their approval for the loan, which he says is needed to better equip the nation's armed forces. Coordinator of the National Information Center, Michael Mary, has been explaining what precisely the loan would be used for and why it is important the government takes it.
What the government is looking for is the approval of the National Assembly so the President may negotiate for the purchase of arms to consolidate, to reinforce the stock that the armed forces has, and to guarantee that we win the war against insurgency and that we have an effective and capable asset to prosecute any unforeseen issue. As per the amount so far spent, I'm not in a position to say so in prosecuting the war. We are still prosecuting the war, so it will be preposterous to begin to calculate cost. And even if there is cost, don't forget our citizens are being abducted. And so whatever is that we need to do, that we must do to get our citizens back, we will do it.
Now, despite those explanations by Mr. Omeri there, some analysts have roundly criticized the rationale behind the loan, arguing that the government should first of all account for all the monies it spent on the insurgency so far. Take a listen now to what some have been saying.
It's preposterous. I sat down and looked at our budget from 2012 till date, and we have spent so much on security. And yet these people are telling us that they need to update our equipment, they need to buy arms, and they need to kit our soldiers and to prepare them, for modern technology. And you now begin to ask, all the ones that we have been budgeting, what have we been using it for? And even if we have to borrow, why go abroad to borrow? It's always very easy to say, well, the rates is cheaper, and to borrow there. Why don't you even make yours cheaper here? Now that they're telling us that there's excess liquidity in circulation. And so when I look at, I really cannot, find any reason why a government at this stage should borrow. Except because we are, we have few months to the election, and so they need money to prosecute election. And then when you look at it, you look at it from the accounting perspective, you ask yourself, how did they arrive at this round figure of $1 billion? I still really cannot fathom it.
The reality is that there is a budget, and that this insurrection has been taking place for quite some time now, for about 4 or 5 years now, consistently. And so there's a provision that is made, and this provision, it's not just, something that the politicians came up with. It is the soldiers that have always, each time that money has to be released to the military establishment, they have always come up with the needs, their requirements to prosecute the battle against the Boko Haram, insurgents, effectively. And so you want to ask yourself, why all of a sudden this amount of money is needed? Have budgetary expectations, for instance, or budgetary expenditure been exceeded, somehow? And again, what has the money been used for? Because when the government starts throwing money around in this manner, to aid the fight against terrorism or insurgency, you want to begin to see the results. But right now, with what we are seeing on ground, they have continued to operate at will. They have continued to take people, kidnap people at will in Nigeria. They bomb even beyond their normal basis of operation in the northeast. They have bombed Abuja several times. We have been told that they have bombed Lagos also, and so on. So it would appear that instead of limiting the ability of the Boko Haram insurgents and so on, with all the huge expenditure that is being given to the military and so on, that they are also, the Boko Haram people are also spreading their tentacles to other parts of the country.
Now it's now 95 days actually since Boko Haram abducted over 200 schoolgirls from their dormitory in the remote town of Chibok in Borno State. Despite an international rescue operation involving countries like the United States, UK, France and Israel, the girls have still not been found. Boko Haram has said it would only release the girls if the government released its fighters in government custody, but then the government has maintained that it cannot negotiate with terrorists. Now, some have been pressing the government to negotiate with the sect to release the girls. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aminu Damboa, has now added his voice to those calling for negotiation. Listen to what he told members of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign who visited him recently.
I have personally come out about 2-3 years ago in Kano to advocate for negotiations with Boko Haram. So many Nigerian leaders feel that we shouldn't negotiate. I have maintained my position that we should negotiate. If negotiations is what will bring back, for example, Chibok girls, for goodness sake, let's negotiate and save the children. After all, as I've said somewhere, Israel and Palestinians are still talking. So negotiations is not submitting. You are not just submitting. You are not. It's a strategy. So let's get these girls out, and then if you want to confront them, you go ahead and confront them and take them head on. But whatever we need to do, we must do as a government to bring back these girls safely and alive.
And to politics now. Nasarawa state lawmakers have leveled 16 charges bordering on alleged official gross misconduct against Governor Tanko Almakura. The charges by the State House of Assembly include missing local government joint account funds between June 2011 and April 2012 and from January to July 2013. Other alleged offences, according to the House, include misappropriation of funds in local government joint account and local government Shorepay fund, as well as transfer of local government Shorepay fund to a fixed deposit account. 20 out of the 24 members of the Assembly had served an impeachment notice to the governor, alleging that those offences now amounted to gross violation of Section 162, subsection 7 and 8 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. Meanwhile, the police command in Nasarawa State said it has arrested 22 people in Lafia following violent protests by some groups over the impeachment notice served on Governor Almakura. State Commissioner of Police Ibrahim Idris confirmed the arrest at a media briefing, saying no life was lost, but 2 persons sustained injuries and were hospitalized in Lafia. Idris said a locally made pistol, some ammunition, knife and dangerous weapons were recovered from the suspects. He added that 5 shops and a residential apartment were vandalized while a vehicle was burnt by the hoodlums during the protest. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation NNPC says it will continue to dialogue with the National Assembly over its directive that the corporation should refund $262 million to the Federation account. In a statement signed by Ohia Legba, its Group General Manager, Public Affairs Division in Abuja, the NNPC says the money was the sum the corporation expended on holding strategic reserves and maintenance of pipelines. The statement stated that the controversy over those expenditures arose from the burden heaped on NNPC as a petroleum product supplier of last resort. It, however, said there was no adequate provision for funding from the Petroleum Support Fund on the extra expenditures on holding offshore strategic reserves. To health matters now, a new global report by UNAIDS has shown that new HIV infections in Nigeria had declined by 35% in the past 3 years. The United Nations Program on HIV and AIDS Country Director in Nigeria, Dr. Bilali Kamara, has said. According to the report released on July 16, 2014 in Geneva, Switzerland, Nigeria was part of countries in the world that realized a rapid increase in the number of people living with HIV accessing antiretroviral therapy. Kamara, in a statement, has decried the decline in new infections as a clear. He said the decline in infection now is a clear sign that the federal government was steering the HIV response in the right direction. To the foreign scene now, questions after questions have continued to trail the news of the ill-fated Malaysian Airlines flight, which was allegedly shot down in Ukraine's eastern region, killing all 298 people on board. One of such questions remain: who shot down the plane? The two sides in the Ukraine civil conflict have accused each other of shooting the jet down with a missile. U.S. and Ukraine officials said they believe the plane had been brought down by a missile, a Boko, thought to have been used by the rebels in Ukraine. Ukraine has called the disaster an act of terrorism, blaming it on Russia, who it says has been aiding the rebels in the conflict. Separatist rebels have been fighting government forces in the region. Meanwhile, international investigators have arrived at the crash site of the plane after rebels in eastern Ukraine allowed them access. At least 189 Dutch nationals, 27 Australians, 44 Malaysians, including 15 crew, 12 Indonesians, 9 Britons and 4 Germans were on board the ill-fated Malaysia Airlines. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the country is prepared to significantly widen its ground offensive against militants in the Gaza Strip. The Prime Minister said the military was targeting the Hamas tunnel network, which it could not do only from the air. Thousands of troops moved into parts of Gaza on Thursday night, backed by tanks and artillery fire. The decision to send in troops comes 10 days after intensive rocket fire from militants in Gaza and airstrikes by Israel. Hamas, the Palestinian group that controls Gaza, has said Israel will pay a high price for the invasion. Meanwhile, officials in Gaza say about 271 Palestinians, majority of them civilians, have died since the start of the wider Israeli operation on July 8. Israel says it has carried out more than 1,960 attacks in Gaza since that date, while militants have fired some 1,380 rockets at Israel. It says more than 50 rockets have been fired at Israel since the ground operation began. The UN says at least 1,370 homes have been destroyed in Gaza and more than 18,000 persons displaced in recent hostilities. And now to sports, and something for Nigerians to cheer about. FIFA has lifted the suspension it imposed on the Nigerian Football Federation, NFF, for government interference. The World Football Governing Body lifted the suspension following the country's adherence to its instruction that the sacked NFF board be reinstated by July 17th. Ebiakpo Baribote, wife of the former chairman of the Nigerian Professional Football League, Ramson Baribote, withdrew the suit exactly on the given deadline, prompting FIFA to lift the ban. Meanwhile, following the reversal of the court order that ousted them from office, the reinstated board, led by Chairman Amidu Begari, convened at the Secretariat for a crucial meeting. Germany's captain Philipp Lahm has retired from international football. The World Cup winning captain retired from the national team following his country's successful campaign in Brazil. The 30-year-old played a key role in helping Germany to a fourth World Cup triumph, their first major trophy, since Euro 1996. He played a key role in all 7 games and was one of 10 nominees for the Golden Ball Award presented to the tournament's best player, but eventually lost out to Messi. He announced his retirement following talks with national team coach Joachim Low, adding that he felt it was the right time to retire. Well, I think obviously he took the right decision. And let me just say congratulations to Nigeria. We're now back to international football. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for watching TV360 Now. We're back again tomorrow. I am Deji Badimasi. See you then.